Hey guys, if you haven't seen my last video, I suggest you go watch that now before you watch this video. You're more than welcome to click off of this video if you do not want to hear how Michaela died, but it is a soft, sweet story and I would like to share it with you. As most of you know, Michaela was in the hospital only a short month ago, not even. She recovered well from that stay. She finished her antibiotics at home and recovered well. I believe it was a day after she finished her antibiotics course that we went to our children's center for a seating appointment to talk about her chair and how it's not working for her, how it is working for her. And I also wanted to talk about some other things. But that appointment, she aspirated, of course, because she was in her chair, and we started antibiotics again that night. Once again, she recovered well from that course of antibiotics. However, while being on that course of antibiotics, Damien had brought the flu home from school, and I believe Dad got it. I don't know if Kyle got it. I actually didn't get it, and we were hoping that because Michaela was just finishing up her antibiotics, we could keep the contagious stage contained until she was off antibiotics. However, once again, a couple days later, she started to have symptoms and we started our antibiotics again. I believe she went one day of antibiotics and we were just going to try and take her to the hospital and get rid of it quickly because we knew that she had already had such a rough last little while. So we actually called the hospital and said, we're gonna come in. We think Michaela could use some BiPAP and antibiotics through IV. She wasn't dehydrated yet. Her lungs actually didn't sound that bad. Her one side was clear, but I could no longer go up on her oxygen. She had just been put up to 5 liters and the concentrator only goes to 5 liters. So we know at that point that when she hits the 5 liters, we have to go to the hospital. So we got ready the next hour or so, getting bags together and just getting prepared to go to the hospital. Kyle had packed the car up and we put Michaela in her chair, and within, I would say, a few minutes of her being in her chair while we were getting last few minute things together, she had started to decline. Her breathing was completely abnormal. Her lips were bluey tinged, her face yellowy tinged, and I knew that something was wrong. I grabbed my oxygen monitor and it was sitting at like 40, 30, something like that. And I know sometimes that when I put the oxygen monitor on her finger, it'll read incorrectly if it's not sitting exactly properly. So I didn't panic for a second until I noticed her breathing was really bad. Also on the monitor, it showed her heart rate was really low. I can't even tell you what it was, but it was 2 digits, and I know with Michaela, her heart rate is never 2 digits. So at this point, I looked at Kyle and I said, she's dying. And he looked back at me and said, yeah, she is. And Mom and Dad were there. And Mom asked if we wanted to call 911, and we said no, because we had always hoped that Michaela could go home at home, and we knew this was the end of the road for her. We had just talked the last time we were in Sick Kids about how much longer we were gonna do this, and that we were tired, and Michaela's tired, and that she's fought so hard the last year, and you can only watch your child suffer for so long. But that didn't mean we thought it was gonna be this soon. So before I said to Kyle that she was dying, we had thrown her on a tank, oxygen tank, because they go up to 8 liters, and she wasn't recovering. So that's how I knew. So I ripped her out of the chair, took all the belts off of her, and I sat on the couch with her and just watched her slowly stop breathing. I asked my brother to run out and grab my stethoscope so I could listen to her heart, because I knew it was slowing. And I could just tell. So there was that point where we knew there was no coming back, and I took her mask off. Just told her I loved her. Told everybody to say their goodbyes, because this was it. And as much as it hurt me, we knew it was the right thing, because she had suffered for so long. So at that point, I was still holding her in my arms, and she took her last breath, and I just held her. I knew at that point I had to make a phone call to my family doctor, and she said she couldn't really do anything because she's not her care. We see our family doctor every once in a while, but she's the person that's close to us as a family, because she's been my doctor for my entire life. So she told us to call our pediatrician, which is the hospital that we had just talked to an hour prior. So I got on the phone with the hospital and basically told our nurse that she passed away before we could get out the door, and they were going to contact our pediatrician because she wasn't on call that night. And at that point I was told that we would have to call 911, explain that it's not an emergency, that we didn't want CPR, and they would have to transfer her to our local hospital. And I so badly didn't want that for her. I didn't want her transferred all over the place for no reason. And luckily, by the time we had to make that call, I was on the phone with the on-call doctor, and she said to try OPP first, which is Ontario Provincial Police. She said, explain to them that obviously it's not an emergency, that she's passed away, and that you don't need lights and sirens. So I made that phone call, and the dispatcher was very helpful, and she said that they do this all the time and no worries, they would take care of it. After about, I would say, an hour or so, the police showed up, and by this time we were able to pass Makayla around. Everyone got to hold her. Kyle, before I even made that phone call, Kyle had gotten a hold of his dad, and his dad was over here, and we all just got to be with her and hold her, which I couldn't be more thankful for those moments. So the police got here. There was 2 officers, a male and a female. They came in and just basically said, where would you like Makayla to go? What funeral home? We told them, and they said that they would take care of all that. So because there is 3 different funeral homes, like I mentioned in my last video, of course the funeral home people were at the farthest one, which is a blessing in disguise, because we got to spend I believe, an extra 3 hours with Michaela that people normally wouldn't get. So after everybody had held her, I took her back until it was time to let her go. And I was okay with her going, but I wasn't okay with her leaving. And Kyle had picked her up out of my arms, and I got up, and he transferred her back to me, and I laid her on the gurney. And that was the hardest moment of my entire life. Knowing that she was going forever. The funeral home people asked, as they were zipping up the body bag, if I would like them to leave it below her head. And I said yes, which was so nice of them. And I got to the point where I knew I had to turn away and walk away, because I wasn't gonna let them leave. I turned away and they took her. After she left, we all just sat there, numb, not knowing what to think or say. And by this time it was going on like 3:30, I think, in the morning. And this whole time Damien was sleeping on the couch. Before we had put her in her chair to go to the hospital, Damien was so upset and he didn't want us to leave. And I think it made it so much harder for him because he was sitting on the couch all upset. And I don't think he quite knew what was happening. But then again, he knew what was happening because I was holding her in my arms and Dad was in front of me. And he even asked Dad to move out of the way so he could see her. And I think it was so mentally exhausting for him that he just eventually went to sleep. So he didn't see her leave, which I'm thankful for, because no 5-year-old should have to see their sister leave like that. So I guess that's how it all happened. And Kyle and I just knew that it was her time. Before she left, I thanked her for everything, because she taught me so much. The next couple days were rough. Not sleeping that night at all. And then the next day, I napped on her couch. I had a rough night again. I believe I came in here and tried to do some stuff. And every time I tried, I would break down. There was one night I came in here because I couldn't sleep. And there was one receiving blanket that she had used last. And I just held it and sat here on the floor. And then I saw all her blankets in this. And I just ripped them all out and laid on the floor. And finally I was able to sleep. Since then we're doing better. Knowing that she chose the perfect time that no one else could have ever imagined. I had always hoped that she was gonna pass in her sleep comfortably, but I also feared that she was gonna pass in a hospital with a breathing tube and having to pull it, which was my worst fear, with no one around other than me or Kyle. But no, she chose so perfectly. Her whole family was here. She was at home. She was in my arms. We got to hold her and say goodbye properly. She just knew. And for it to be on a stupid leap year day, I can't even. So I think she knew that when Mommy and Daddy started talking about how much longer we were gonna do this, she knew it was okay to go. And then of course we would be hurt, but we'd be okay. And we no longer wanted to see her in pain, because it's the worst thing, is watching your child suffer. So I wanted to leave you with one last thing from my speech in my last video from her funeral. Life is too short to wait. Do what you have to do now. Tell the people you love them. Cuddle them, hug them. Give them kisses. Because life is way too short. Especially in Michaela's instance. We only had her for a decade. But thankfully, we were so lucky to have her even that short time. So I guess that's it for this video. And again, I'm sorry that we had to share this, but I feel like you guys would want to know that she passed peacefully and that she was no longer hurting. My next video will be of Michaela's slideshow, and I hope you all enjoy it. And I guess we will see you then.